Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm Jim Ewing with Provision Solutions. We've enjoyed sharing insights, inspiration, and informative updates through our Marketplace Ministries events. Whether in person or virtual, there's been a wealth of great resources provided. Details are provided in the comments below, along with information on staying informed of upcoming events and interacting with others online. We trust you'll enjoy the segment and invite you to be a part of our Marketplace Ministries Network. We'd love to have you as part of our collaborative Christian community. Thanks. And now, here's our presentation. Life can be filled with challenges and difficulties. Such was the case for a young Chris Ferland, who struggled with a variety of abuses and addictions. But the good news is that God can bring good things out of the bad. And as many can attest, he has often found unusual ways of bringing that about. Here's Chris as he shares his story, one of troubles, testing, and triumph. Although Chris knows it's all still a work in progress.
So basically I found that in life we go around in these circles, right? And when we go around in these circles of learning and doing that, it's easy for me to go ahead of God. And I found that the last year and a half of my life has been spent seeking God first and waiting for Him to show me where to go and what to do. I find that the old way of me doing things, going ahead of God and just kind of, not really asking Him where He wants me to go, what He wants me to do and how He wants me to be, and then just ending my day, okay, wow, that was a busy day, hopefully I did something right, as opposed to intentionally starting the day, every day, with that quiet time with God. And then God presents opportunities. So yeah, I find that in doing that, I'm learning so much more. And if I would have learned that 40 years ago, that would be great, right? Yeah. I'm Chris Ferland, and I am 52 years old, and I am also a recovering drug addict and alcoholic of 26 years. So it's actually in April next month will be half of my life will be sober, which is amazing. Never saw that coming. Never ever saw that coming. So I own a business. We're in Good News Auto, and Good News Auto was started 12 years ago, and it was formed out of a church ministry, and so that is kind of where my purpose is at in my life. So originally Edmonton is my home. I was born and raised in Edmonton, and also out in Onaway and Alberta Beach area. And then when I reached a certain age, I decided to move to the West Coast. But growing up in the Edmonton area, I grew up in a very interesting home. Both loving parents. My father struggled with alcoholism, right? And my father struggled with expressing love. And my mom was a person who kind of had to make up for that, right? And in making up for that, her full-time job became kind of sweeping things under the carpet, right? And so in my rebellion, I decided to start using drugs and drinking at a very early age. I started that in grade 5. And so I failed my first year of grade 5. In my second year of grade 5, They actually just moved me on to grade 6 to get me out of class. And then I went from grade 6 to grade 7, and then grade 7 to grade 8. And I only lasted a little while in grade 8. And so I quit school. And so in quitting school in grade 8, I decided to go further down. Now I didn't have to be sober for 6 hours a day or 8 hours a day. I could do my thing all day long. And so I went downhill really fast, and I moved to Vancouver because I had ripped off so many people in the Edmonton area to support my drug habit that if I didn't move, I probably would have got killed, to be honest with you. And so that changed my life, because that helped me come to a bottom. Because of the grace of God, I was able to sober up, right, 26 years ago. And so growing up was very interesting. My parents did the best they could with what they had. And my father did the best he could with what he had. But I just found that it wasn't good enough for me, right? So I tried to do it on my own. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere, so I made myself feel like I belonged by covering up my feelings and numbing out, and cocaine and alcohol and weed and everything else in between. So yeah, it's a story that all ties together. So when I was 12, we would take summer vacations to Abbotsford, and when we were in Abbotsford, we would visit some family, and I was, like I said, I was already drinking and smoking pot at that age, and so we would go there, and me and my cousin Corey, we would smoke pot for a week. And then we would go home. I would go home. And this one particular time we were going home. And I mean, you have to understand the day and age, right? My dad had a 1977 Ford LTD. I still remember it, had the nice white leather, and it was blue car on the outside. But on the inside was a different story, because Mom and Dad both smoked. The windows were up. They're both chain smoking. But I remember looking over my dad's shoulder as we were driving down the two, so a couple lanes, few lanes this way, a few lanes this way, and just looking over his shoulder and looking across all the traffic, and I noticed on the service road, I couldn't tell at first, but then I realized it was somebody riding a horse, and they were going fast, right? Like they were racing traffic. Once I started to see it more through all the smoke in the car, I realized what I was watching, and it was this girl, and she was riding this horse, and so I was just mesmerized as she went by. And then I remember turning around in my seat, and I'm looking out the back window, and I got my arms propped up on the back seat, and I'm looking out, and then over the horizon, she's gone, right? It was early-ish in the morning. It was probably about 8:30. And yeah, so that was that. And I didn't really think anything of it, except for the fact that it just seemed so peaceful, so incredibly peaceful. And then I remember, if you fast forward until I was 24 or 25 years old, and in between that 12 years old and 24 years old was 12 years of just going downhill. I was 126 pounds. I'm 215 now. So I was 126 pounds when I met a lady, and her name was Kimberly, and we hung out a bit, and she really took a liking to me. I have no idea why, because I was not. I mean, I was a drug addict, right? But she took me out. I was on a day pass, and she took me out, and she just wanted to take me away from the recovery center, away from all of that stuff, and just, I guess, maybe help me experience the real world, so to speak. And so we were driving, and this was right by Abbotsford, and as we're driving, she's like, "I'd like to show you the farm, a couple of farms that I grew up at." So we went over to this one. I think it was off of like McDermott Road, a bunch of dairy farms, and so she showed me that one, and I was like, "Yeah, it's a farm, right? Thanks a lot." And then she's like, "I'll show you the other one." So then we went down and went through these back roads, and then we started to drive down this service road. And as we were driving down that service road, I started to get these goosebumps, and I started to feel like I've been here before. Something about this is familiar. And so she said, when I was a kid, I was about 12, 13 years old, and my parents had bought me a horse. And I used to ride that horse on this service road, and I would race cars. And I just remember when she said that, it brought me back to that moment when I was 12 years old, when I was looking over my dad in the smoke-filled 1977 Ford LTD, when I was looking over his shoulder, and just how peaceful I felt when I was watching this girl. I still remember what she was wearing, everything. And so Kimberly and I, we ended up getting married. Over a course of the next 2 years, I treated her like crap when I was still using. So I was in a recovery house. She took me out on a day pass. I went back to the recovery house or the treatment center. I went back to using and drinking shortly thereafter. But she was now my friend. And she had a little bit of money, and I was an addict. And so I stole from her, and I stole from her, and I stole from her. And in turn, kind of almost like slapping her in the face. Not physically, but mentally, because she was helping me, and I was making it so that, I was taking advantage of her, really. And but as God would have it, I ended up moving back to Edmonton. I didn't realize that she was from here. She ended up moving back here to be with her parents, and then I went into a treatment center again, but this time I stayed, and that was on April 29th, 1998. The day my world changed. And it was then that I started to realize that I love this woman, and that God had, sometimes when we're going through life and we don't realize that God's in control, we don't realize that God is doing things behind the scenes that we'll never be able to understand. And when he does that, and when we're able to take a step back and look at that, it was just amazing to see how he tied the whole thing together, you know. And it all started with the girl on a horse that I had no idea, that I, not even in my wildest dream, I didn't even have the thought that one day I would meet her, right? Like it wasn't even a thing. And to have met her and to have her introduce me to Jehovah El Roy, which is the God who sees me, to have her introduce me to God, and to have my life changed, and to have what I have now, is absolutely a miracle. So that same girl that was on the horse, that same girl that, with God's help, that saved my life back in 1996, 7, and 8, that has allowed me to have the privilege of being clean and sober for 26 years. We were married for 4 days short of 20 years. And yeah, and then she lost her battle with cancer. To go through all of these things and to realize that even in the hardest times, even in the most difficult times of our lives, of my life, God has been there, right? God has been there. I remember, I don't know if this is appropriate for me to talk about or whatever, but it's in the last 3 days of her life, I went through it seemed like I went through 100 years of growth in such a short time. She went into palliative care, and she was at the General Hospital, and was on the 5th floor overlooking Jasper Avenue and a couple little strip mall type things, and some houses and stuff. And I remember looking out the window, and I was like, where are you, God? Like, where are you? This woman that you brought to me, this woman that rescued me, now look at her. She's dying. Where have you been, right? Where were you? Where are you? And why? And I remember I was looking out the window, and I had tears rolling down my cheek, and Kimberly's listening to some music in her hospital bed in this dingy room that people are supposed to have dignity when they die, and I'm crying, and I'm having this conversation with myself, like in my head, with God. And then I looked out the window, and I seen this commercial strip mall, and I seen these stairs that go down and these stairs that go up. And I looked at that, and I remembered that building from when I was court ordered, when I was 13 years old, to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. The judge said, either you're going to AA or you're going to go to kiddie jail. And I chose AA, and gladly. But I remember looking down there, and I seen that, and then it was like everything, the whole string of my whole life with Kimberly, all came together. And in that moment, I looked at, if I wouldn't have gotten arrested when I was 13 years old, and I hadn't gone to that AA meeting, I wouldn't have gotten the Spirit of God instilled into my heart about my drinking and all that thing. And then over the next 12, 13 years, I kept going back to the program, and I kept going back to doing those things. And it was the one thing that that enabled me to be able to meet the girl, to have my life changed, to marry the girl, to help her through her death. Yeah, to help her through her death. And all of that, I realized all of that. God, where are you? Where have you been? I was right there at that AA meeting when you walked through the door, and I carried you through all this so that you could be my hands to help her die. World we live in, it can be hard to step out in faith. It can be hard to step out with an idea about maybe something that you want to do for God, or that you feel that God is calling you to do in business, whether it be in personal life or business. But in business, you may feel like that you'll be in over your head. And what will people think? What will people think if I do this? I guess my message would be, who cares? Who cares what people think if you're following what God says to do, what God is leading you to do? Because God will surround you with the right people. God will surround you with the right purpose, the right planning, if you don't go before God. And so if you do have an idea of something you would like to do in business or in the business community that you may be feeling is kind of out there, out of your comfort zone, but you feel that that's what you're supposed to do, I would say surround yourself with a couple people first, test it, make sure that it's what makes sense, and then do it. Just go for it. Just go for it, right? You got nothing to lose. If it's God's idea for your life, it's going to work out no matter what. And it might not equate success money-wise, but we're successful because we follow our promptings of what God wants us to do. So I would say to that person, do it. Just do it. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Thanks for being with us. We trust you found this to be helpful. And if so, please give us a like, a follow, and a share. The Bible says in Matthew, "Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." If you're launching or growing a business, a ministry area, or a special project, or if you're involved in helping them as a resource or service provider, we'd love to have you participate with us. Stay informed of upcoming events and items of interest by subscribing to the Marketplace Ministries Update, sent out periodically. May God bless you as you do your best to faithfully represent Jesus Christ in the marketplaces of life.